You got new cinnamon on there. You know, you got something going on in your life that is worth sharing. Share. Everyone else in the group, please go on there. Love it, comment, and share that to other people as well outside of the group. All right, let's make sure that we're all helping each other, not only within the group and within our one-to-ones, but also if we can through Facebook and help each other get some more business. Liz, you good, or do I need to keep stalling?
No, I think I'm good, but I'm on the wrong slide. So can you see, you can see all of this, which means that that's not quite right. So close your eyes for a second. Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay. I am Liz, and I've never done this particular part because I usually just dive in, but I've timed this and I think we're good. So this is me, this is my family, my husband over there and my kid. We're actually from Maryland, go figure. When my kid was born at about 6 months old, we got in an RV and we moved to California. And then we were there for about 7 years before my husband's father died. And then we were left with this insane choice. Do we stay 3,000 miles away from family, or do we come back? And so we had this awesome choice, heads Carolina, tails California. We flipped a coin and we ended up in North Carolina. So we brought our dog. This is Monster, he's 13, he's wonderful. And these are the cats. I'm not gonna say any more about them. So here we are. And today's presentation is called Emotional-ish, Understanding Ourselves Better to Become Our Better Selves. We are going to get started today by asking a very simple question, because I always do that. What is emotion? Once we get to the bottom of that, we can start to have a better understanding of how we can use our emotions to prescribe our futures, to capitalize on the aha moments, and to increase their impact. We can start to take action regarding our behavioral patterns rather than just accepting those things as who we are. Yeah, once we re-understand emotions, we can actually start to relax. We can stop worrying about the past. We can start to smile when we plan for a future that we know that we can achieve, but not until we get it. And so this is how we start. What is emotion? What does it do? So I took Sage's idea. I've got this little 4-minute counter, but it's not, well, whatever, it's okay. So what is emotion? We're gonna take a couple of minutes and we're gonna talk about that. I wanna know, what does emotion do? How do we know it? How do we know that it's there? Does anybody here have any ideas? Just pop up. Anybody?
You feel it.
It takes control.
It takes control, you feel it. What does that look like?
I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my gut. I feel like something's trying to tell me something.
Okay, that's such an interesting thing you said, Sage. You feel it in your gut, like something is trying to tell you something. Eric, you said it takes control, right? We talk about emotions like we understand them, like it's a thing that we can put our finger on. But what is emotion? It's so hard, right? You know, I had given us 4 minutes for this, but we also went a little over. So if everybody wants, we can move on a little bit because I want to just kind of push us through. So the way that I work and the way that I look at emotion is that emotion is a process. All right, let me see. And that process has a lot to do with how we're thinking, right? So Sage, you said, I feel something in my stomach like it's trying to tell me something. So what happens to you when you feel something in your stomach? And you know it's trying to tell you something. The process goes like this. What is that feeling? What is it trying to say to me? What's going on here? And when we start with that process, this crazy, crazy thing happens. Okay, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I started with only 5 dots and then I really needed you to see because it's more than just a process, it's a cycle, okay? This whole emotional life that we have, it's in process. It's not like there is one thing that happens and now we're gonna have a reaction to it, right? We're already in it. So then when this next thing happens, it's the next step. I've got some notes here, let me get back to them. We're going to break down this process. It's a cycle. We have to find an entry point. And if you look at the cycle like this, it's not like you can say, here's the beginning. So I'm just going to pick one, okay? And I'm going to pick this one, the trigger, okay? This first trigger. Something in or around us grabs our attention. It's from that millisecond of awareness that we start our internal process. We ask ourselves, what just happened? What's the sensation? And then from that question, our subconscious actually provides us with an answer, usually in the form of an image, okay? There's something going on. It's from that image that our emotional state is set. Now I'm scared. Now I'm angry. I'm sad. Now I'm really happy, right? It's based on that image. Okay, all of our behavior is predicated on how we feel. So word, the trigger, then the word, what just happened, then the picture. That's where our emotional state shows up, and then we act based on how we feel. So let's do a quick example. Who here has ever been cut off on the highway? The first thing that comes to my mind, or that used to come to my mind, was, what, am I invisible? My best friend, on the other hand, goes, that guy, you know, who does he think he is, right? Everybody has a different set of thoughts that are associated with getting cut off on the road. And then you get to where you are and you're worked up, right? Who's that guy? Oh, he's the guy that cut me off. Now I'm going to be like this, and now I'm going to show up at work and be like, what? Does anybody else have that experience where something happens and then they just hold on to it for the rest of the day? Okay, so let me find this. Variations on the thoughts are common, but you get that the irritation, anger that you feel when someone cuts you off actually begins with the thought and then quickly cascades into honking horns, flipping them off, flashing our lights, clutching our steering wheels, screaming, or worse. The outcome of repeated exposure to that trigger is that the process becomes a habit, one that moves at a rate that is so much faster than our intentional thought process. And these become our patterns of behavior. They all begin with a simple thought. So today we're going to discover the purpose of an emotion. So if emotions are actually part of a process or a cycle that starts with thinking, we actually have some different questions that we have to ask. What do our thoughts do for us? Who knows? Who here wants to share with me what they think the purpose of our thoughts are? What do they do?
Keep us safe.
They try to help us to understand what our emotions are. They come up with an explanation for our emotions.
Okay. So they inform us about our safety. They can help us question and you know, look for more. They help us to narrate what's going on around us. Oh, that's a really pretty tree. I love that the sun is out, right? They help us create things. How do we get creative, right? There are lots of purposes for our thoughts, like this is what they do. But now we come to, are our thoughts always correct, true, and helpful? I see Katie, she's like, no, nuh-uh. Right? Okay, so that's something that we did. Is there anybody in this room here who believed that their thoughts were always correct, true, and helpful? Okay, good. That's good. Next question. Are our thoughts within our control?
To a degree. Yeah.
Say more.
Well, I think that as you know, we can meet a lot of people that are, you know, negative forces, and there are people that we know that are sort of positive forces. They always seem to have a great attitude, and then things happen in their lives, and then they're all of a sudden different, you know. So I think that outside forces can make a difference in controlling the way we behave and think.
That was a lot to say right there. And you're absolutely right. You know, things that are going on. Well, let's say, because if our thoughts are only related to the things that are going on externally, or like if you're ill internally, then are they in our control? Or are they being ping-ponged around based on the stimuli in the world? And so this is where I think a lot of people come to. I saw Sage going kind of like this. Like, what does that mean, Sage?
Kind of.
I think there's a lot of times where you take input of stimulus that's out there and you're taking and receiving that input. And there's some times where we start thinking about that, but I still feel we have somewhat of a choice to say whether it's going to impact us or not, or whether we want to think more about it, or whether we want to apply. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it just hits us and you're like, shit, I'm triggered. Sorry, I'm sore, but shoot, I'm triggered. And then all of a sudden I'm stuck on it. But I feel like we have a little bit of control whether we spend too much thought on it or more thought.
And that's precisely where we're heading today. So I'm on somebody else's thing. What can we do about any of this, right? Our thoughts, not unlike our blinking and our breathing, are very much automatic. They're there and they need to go automatically. However, not unlike breathing and blinking, if we set our intention on it, we can choose to take a deeper breath, to keep our eyes closed for a little longer. We can choose to say, this thought does not serve me. And so we come to this. What did we talk about before? How do we define emotion? We often define it by the impact, the effect of the recognized emotion on the situation, or the effect of the behavior. The information that you can get about emotion often comes from the behavior. And if you're somebody like me, we trace it backwards. How somebody must have felt in order to have done or said such a thing, whatever that thing was. But this isn't about other people's behavior, it's about yours and how you can make choices about it. So I'm gonna change the way you're thinking about emotions even more right now. I want you to start thinking about emotional information as part of your sensory system. And we kind of touched on this before, okay? What's our sensory information? And I just looked at the time, we've got just 4 minutes. So I might just okay, we'll just keep going. So our sensory information, smell, taste, sound, touch, sight, all of these senses give you information about your environment, but they actually give you important information about yourself in the context of the environment. Okay, I was gonna ask for examples, but we're short on time. So now I want you to think about how your emotions inform you about your environment. Think of a time that you were angry about something that you saw. I mean, angry. And were you angry at the person who said or did that offensive thing? Or were you angry that anyone could do such a thing because it's so completely against your own values and beliefs? It's a little bit different, right? We can utilize our emotional sensory information to tell us more about ourselves. The other person, the one who did that thing that made you angry, is also giving you amazing information about yourself. And that person whom you will have enough information to decide if you actually want them in your life, which is another thing that I deal with people a lot, relationships. The bottom line is that we're constantly uploading emotional information to tell us where we're safe, in the same manner that we seek out temperature information to ensure that we don't injure ourselves on a hot stove. Okay, so, there's emotion. So what does this have to do with me? If emotion's just information, how can we best use that information to get ahead of behaviors that we already know mess us up? How do we use what we know now about our emotional patterns to change them in the future? See my hand, it's in the future. All right, emergency brakes. The only way we can do this is to consistently interrupt our thoughts. Think about it like a chain of dominoes, right? You set them up lovingly, and then there's a trigger. You knock over that first tile. And all of the tiles will fall down unless you interrupt the chain reaction. The same is true with our thoughts. And if we can interrupt the pattern, that chain reaction, then we eliminate the poor outcomes that always happen with them. Secret sauce. So now you know you have the power to stop the cascade. But what next? You actually have to choose your next thought. Now, if we had more time, I do have some things, and maybe I'll just leave them up here for a second. Maybe we'll do one of them, right? When somebody says something I don't like, right? Or when somebody reminds me of something painful, what's the first thought that comes to your mind? And let's just do this together. You don't have to say it out loud. I want you to start allowing that thought. And now, stop, interrupt, ask yourself, does this thought serve me? What would be better? If you take a breath on that thought, it will instantly shift how you're feeling in the moment. And when you shift how you're feeling in the moment, that has an impact on how you're thinking. And if that has an impact on how you're thinking, that's going to have an impact on how you're behaving too. It's a cycle. I chose to throw the stick into thinking because that was a good place for me to interrupt. And my clients that work with me learn the best ways for them to interrupt a process that is a habit, that is something that is part of their automatic functioning, so that we can shift it on purpose. And that is part of what I do. Now I'm done. Look, that's how you reach me. Did I do it, Sage?
It was amazing. You even like shorten it just a little bit. So Liz, I want to give you the option because I feel like that last slide you didn't go into as much depth as you wanted to on this. So here's what I can do for everyone. Everyone, it's 5 o'clock. So for some of you, it's less. They're coming from the West Coast, Megan. So you guys absolutely have the option to drop off if you want to. Or Liz, do you want to go into more depth on that last slide?
I'm happy to for anybody who wants to stay. You know, I know it's late and it's Friday, but if you want to, like I said, I love this. It fills me up. So I'm quite happy.
For depth.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and go. If you need to drop, of course you need to drop. Ruthie, if you got to go and cook dinner, by all means, girl, I understand completely, or go do dinner. I understand. So we started just a few minutes late. So Liz, I want to make sure we give you your time. And of course, I want to give you time for questions too. So if you guys are having to drop, thank you guys so much for coming. We will see you next week. And Liz, the floor is yours again. Go ahead.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Bye, Doug.
Take care.
So this slide was really just about, like, for me, the most important thing is to get people practicing. Now, when I learned these tools, it was very much do this seminar and then let people flail and then they'll come back to you. And that's not me, right? So my thing is I always like to get in a little bit more practice. So if anybody wants to practice with it, this is truly all about, and these were just things that came up for me. There might be other things for you. But yes, if, you know, we can do this. When I mess up a project, what do we say to ourselves? And again, we can do this silently, or if you feel like you want to say it out loud.
I'm not good enough.
And see how fast it was? I'm not good enough. I couldn't even get in there to interrupt. But as soon as you recognize it, you can say, stop. And for that, I'm not good enough. You could literally construct a question right there. What do I need to do better? How can I prepare better in the future? It's about interrupting, because once you say I'm not good enough, there's more, right? It never stops with I'm not good enough. Now I'll go watch TV. So that cycle, it's so important.
Trying to reprogram a bad behavior, right? And try to get a different kind of outcome, or build a new habit for a different outcome, right?
So remember, if we think about emotions as part of the sensory system and how the sensory system feeds into the central nervous system. So I try not to geek out on the science too much, but the central nervous system is connected to all of our muscles and all of our tendons and every element of our body. So when we have a thought like I'm not good enough, or I suck, I can't believe I'm so stupid, right? Our muscles do different things, and they send this, like, talk about a chain reaction, and it happens so fast that all of a sudden our thought process is spiraling out of control about how worthless we are. If we can stop it, even if it's at the 10th thought, right? It's better than when you're down in the pit. So interrupting as soon as you recognize that your thought process is detrimental, or best case, just not serving you. This is wasting my time. What do I need to do to get back on track? So this does not discount the truth. It does not try to reframe the truth. In my view, it allows you to take full responsibility for what you've done so that you can do better next time. Because being a human is not about being perfect. It's about doing better every day, right? So if we don't, I used to, with my teenagers, I tell them, you remember when you were riding a bike and somebody puts a stick in the wheel, you stop, right? That's what I want to do with these thoughts. They're the wheel that's going like this. We need to put a stick in it, even if it's jarring. Stop. I'm choosing to ask myself a better question, one that will get me where I want to go. And it can be, I've got like 3 simple ones. What is my next best step? If you interrupt and ask yourself, what is my next best step? I don't know if you noticed, I took a deep breath when I said that. It's helpful. What is my next best step, right? What can I do better next time? How can I forgive myself for the mistakes I've made and move forward with confidence? These 3 questions have saved lives. Can you imagine being so, I used to be that, and if anybody wants to raise their hand and say it's them too, spiraling out of control to the point where, like, we call it, it's hard for me to pronounce it, it's like catastrophism, right? When everything becomes so catastrophic, the world is ending. This is where our thoughts aren't true. They're not helpful, right? And when we can break it apart, and Eric brought this up, facts first, right? Like, you know what, I wrote it down right here. Facts before feelings, right? If your feelings are taking you to the place that's the depths of despair, you gotta check your facts. It's probably not that bad. And if it is, who are the resources I need to reach out to help me right my ship? Nobody else has these answers for you, which is one of the problems that I always found in life. It was like I was always looking for somebody else to tell me what to do, until I went, oh my God, the answers are actually here if I ask the right question.
I wish we would teach something like this, a version of like this, for like preteens, just because teenage years today are a lot different than we were all kids, and it's getting more and more and more complicated and more difficult. This is hitting home for my family, because I have some kids that struggle with anxiety, and when all of a sudden you go from, I don't want to say logical, but that short little feelings to completely illogical, and the train's off the rails. We're just going a little nuts.
Right, and of course the teenagers and teenage girls in particular, if you say you have to stop, they're gonna fight with you. Like, it's just gonna, you know, you may redirect them from the thing they're upset about, and now they're upset with you. So like, it's difficult. It's difficult to work with teens with this, because they haven't had enough experience feeling rotten for a long period of time that truly, well, and they have enough experience with the ups and downs that every single teenager that I've worked with, and I've worked with maybe 60 in the last 2 years, they're like, well, maybe I would have felt better today anyway. I'm like, great, stop using the tools. You know, you don't have to use them. Call me next week. Tell me if you have gone back into your old patterns or not. But with adults, and especially parents, as a parent, if you could say, I hear how you're talking to yourself, and I just can't imagine that it's helping. What if you stopped and said, what can I do about this? Would they be responsive to you? Katie?
When I hear my kids, they're actually, it's more my husband than my kids having that negative loop, I'll say, don't talk to my husband that way.
Yeah.
And I do. I've called him out on it. And anytime I hear someone talking to themselves that way, don't talk to my friend that way. Don't. But I say it to my husband a lot, and it always stops him, because then he sees himself, instead of being in himself and absorbed, he sees himself as somebody worthy of that is cared for, and just shifts things.
Right. Well, you've interrupted the cycle.
Yeah.
And you've helped him focus on something else. Somebody loves me.
Somebody, I'm like, don't you do that? Don't you talk to him that way? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful, because it just takes a moment. Mm-hmm. And like in the past, I remember my mother would always tell me, you know, don't let other people control you. And of course, her words actually fed into it. It's like, oh, now I have no control over anything, and I've given it away. But we have to learn that we can put the brakes on and say, this doesn't serve me. What would be better? So, I mean, like I say, this was all just for practice, because Sage, I was not kidding. When I timed this, I had 10 minutes, right? And that was without the 4 minutes, because I was doing it by myself. So like this, we were going to spend 5 minutes on just really diving into, but I want you all to practice it. And I will give you the homework that I give all of my clients, which is to look for 5 opportunities every single day to interrupt and choose your edit. 5 opportunities every day. When you first get started, most people, you get 5 before you even get out of bed. And then as the days go, you'll find that it's harder and harder to find 5 because you're already doing it. And that's great because you can train your habits just by looking for 5 opportunities every day to use them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any questions for Liz? Liz, that was phenomenal.
Did I do good? I swear I took notes on your presentation.
Really, really good. Yeah, great job.
You did awesome, Liz.
Great job.
I have a
Good
question
job.
for you, Liz. Some people, they try to interrupt their thoughts, and especially once they hear your tool, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And they go to do it, and they still have the thoughts. And they struggle. And then not only are they struggling with the thoughts, then they're struggling with the failure of being able to stop their thoughts.
Right. So the issue then is it's about consistency, right? And most of the time when people stop their thoughts, they're not actually choosing the replacement thought. They're just interrupting it. And then they try to distract themselves by going and watching TV or doing something else. But a simple distraction isn't sufficient. And especially if it's an old ingrained pattern, it's so important that you consistently interrupt. And if your 5 times in that day are just for the same thing, you're doing great.
Yeah, progress.
You know, and you know, anybody who's over, 25 has some pretty deeply ingrained patterns. And so, some people ingrain their patterns much earlier, but let's just say, it takes a while for us to make this new habit part of the fabric of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the desire to do so. I hated being angry. I was so angry.
And it's shifting the thought, not trying to shift the emotion or the feeling. It's just shifting the thought. That the feelings, they're there. They're unconscious. They're coming from places they're coming from the thoughts. So
right. Well, yes, and right, because the feeling might be there, but and we've talked about this, like the chemical reaction of an emotion titrates through your body in 90 seconds, right? And that's where that feeling comes from. It's your body processing these neurotransmitters that have dropped into your system and these stress hormones, right? And so it's like, right? But then they settle in 90 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so then the trauma is because we're still thinking about it, we're still talking about it, we're still engaging with it in that way. Yeah. So to be able to say, like, you feel your shoulders raise. How is this serving me? What would be better, right? And it is about just a dedication. And it's nice to have somebody who's around who can say, I see your shoulders going up, or I see your eyebrows like this. What's going on in your head? Do you need to interrupt? And that's a nice loving way, right, of being able to say, stop this. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Thanks.
Most of what you've been talking about is when you're in the middle of it, actions to take. Is there something you could do before, when maybe when you're thinking clearer to prepare yourself?
Yes. But that was my first presentation. And I'm so happy to do that again if you guys want, or you can just call me any other time. Because yes, this is what I was telling Sage. I distilled the core of the program down to the absolute most critical parts. But then to train the habit, yes, I've got strategies and amazingly beautiful tools.
Gotta love those beautiful tools.
I love my beautiful tools.
Awesome.
Liz, what is your education? Are you a therapist, a licensed therapist, or what is your thing?
I am actually a behavioral scientist. I am not licensed as a counselor or a therapist. I teach people behavioral strategies, and then I teach them to mastery so that I feel confident letting you go back into the world knowing that you know how to use your tools. So I have a master's degree in forensic psychology. I worked with serial killers and juvenile delinquents and gang members. I was halfway through a clinical doctorate in psychology when my son got an autism diagnosis. And I've been playing in emotional behavioral work ever since. And it's been beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. You know, I've been just rolling in my head. Thank God for my faith.
Yes.
I think that when people have it's like a triangle. If you've got a foundation of things that you can stand on that are solid, and and then the next layer might be your education, and then the next layer might be something else about learning about who you are, self improvement things like reading books that are feeding positive and educational things into your system, and you keep building on those, and pretty soon I think we all fall short of the person we really want to be. I mean, we have this idea in our minds about who we are, and you still fall short, and but then there's that comfort of knowing that, well, that foundation is there to know ahead of time I'm gonna fall short, and you can forgive yourself. And I mean, there's this sort of thing, this rotation, this thing that happens, and it takes sometimes it takes a lot of years to settle into that, and it doesn't happen by itself. I think you have to want it, and you have to do the work to get there, and I just find, I was really fascinated by what you had to say, and I'm thinking of my own kids like Sage, and have you written any books, or have you done any? Do you have a blog? Do you have anything if I wanted to refer you to?
I do have, I have a bunch of things. Let's you and I talk off this, and then I'll make sure Sage knows how to find all of my stuff for sure.
Well, you're in the chat, so I copied the chat, and
oh, good.
So I know how to find you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Liz? Liz, I think we can all say that was a great presentation. That really
Thank you.
hit home, not only for myself, but for my family as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming on today. Thank you so much for sharing time with us. I appreciate you guys sharing those great tidbits earlier as well. Like always, these calls or these videos are recorded, and through our Facebook page, you can go back and look at any of our old recordings. I encourage you guys to do that. There's been some great wisdom throughout the years. Plus, you can go back and watch Liz's first time she's presented as well.
Yeah.
And get some even more Liz wisdom for your day. So you guys, we're gonna wrap up here in just a sec. Does anyone have any announcements or anything they want to put out to anyone? Anything upcoming? Anything you're super excited about?
Well, most of I do a very similar type of 4 to 5 o'clock event, Monday through Thursday, that I call the Rally Point Community, and I typically have a speaker, and we do some networking and sharing, and very, very similar format. So anytime you're looking for to plug in and learn something new and meet some new people, you can do that through Team Network as well. You just go to teamnetwork.com, go to my website, the calendar, and you can find us there. And Liz, I'd love to have you come on and speak.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Great.
Kurt, maybe on a Wednesday.
Maybe on a Wednesday, Eric. Yeah.
Just saying. Wednesdays are a good day now.
It is a good day. Eric is a Team Network member, and he's taken on the task of facilitating Wednesdays.
Eric is facilitating the new Huckleberry to facilitate Wednesdays. Is that you, Eric?
Be afraid.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it goes. It's gonna be off the rails. All right, guys. With that, if no one has anything else, I think this is gonna be it. I'm gonna stop the recording for here, and